there, welcome to the Fortune Living Podcast, the show that empowers you to reach your full potential in both your personal and professional life. Today, we'll be looking at the topic how to overcome imposter syndrome as a professional. You might be wondering what imposter syndrome is. Well, have you ever felt like you don't deserve your success or like you're a fraud and any moment now someone will find out? That's imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is super common among professionals, and studies shows that up to 70% of people experience it at some point in their careers. It's like a little voice in your head that says you're not good enough, even when you have all the qualifications and skills that you need. Let me give you an example. Let's say you just got a promotion at work. Instead of feeling happy and proud of yourself, you feel anxious and like you don't deserve it. You might think, I'm not really good enough for this job. I must have gotten lucky. That's imposter syndrome talking. Okay, the causes of imposter syndrome are complex, but oftentimes it involves societal pressures to succeed and meet certain expectations, and the consequences can be severe too, like limiting your potential and causing anxiety and depression. But the good news is that there are ways to overcome imposter syndrome, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. So stick around to learn how to recognize imposter syndrome and what you can do to overcome it and achieve success in your career. Imposter syndrome is a common phenomenon that affects professionals in various industries, and I can speak from personal experience. There have been times when I've doubted my abilities, even though I knew I had the qualifications and skills to do the job. It's like a little voice in my head saying you're not good enough, and it can be tough to silence that voice. But it's not just me. Studies shows that imposter syndrome is prevalent among professionals, and it can have real consequences. It can lead to limiting your potential, avoiding opportunities, and causing anxiety or depression. That's why it's so important to discuss this issue and learn how to overcome imposter syndrome. By recognizing when it's happening and taking the steps to combat it, we can unlock off its potentials and achieve success in our careers and life generally. So, whether you are a recent graduate, starting your first job, or a seasoned professional with years of experience, imposter syndrome can affect anyone, but it's not something that has to hold you back. With the right tools and mindset, you can overcome imposter syndrome and reach your full potential. By the end of this episode, you have a better understanding of what imposter syndrome is, why it's so common among professionals, and what you can do to overcome it. Whether you're just starting out in your career or you're a seasoned professional, imposter syndrome can affect anyone, but with the right mindset and strategies, you can overcome it and achieve success in your career. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where people doubt their skills, accomplishments, and abilities and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. It's like having a little voice in your head that tells you're not good enough, even when you have all the qualifications and skills that you need. Some common symptoms of imposter syndrome include feeling like you don't deserve your accomplishments, being afraid of failure, and worrying that others will find out that you're not as good as they think you are. You might also feel like you're constantly comparing yourself to others and that you're not measuring up. These feelings can be overwhelming and can lead to limiting your potential and avoiding opportunities that could lead to success. But the good news is that imposter syndrome can be overcome, and I'll be discussing some strategies for doing so in this episode. There are several different types of imposter syndrome, each with their own unique characteristics. Let's take a look at some of the major. There are several different types of imposter syndrome, each with their own unique characteristics. Let's take a look at some of the common types and their differences. We have the perfectionist, which is a type of imposter syndrome that involves setting extremely high standards for yourself and feeling like anything less than perfection is failure. Perfectionists often struggle with completing tasks and may avoid trying new things altogether for fear of failure. And then the expert, people with this type of imposter syndrome feel like they need to know everything about a subject before they can speak or act on it. They will feel like they are not knowledgeable enough or fear being exposed as a fraud. And then the soloists, this type of imposter syndrome involves feeling like you need to do everything on your own and that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Soloists may struggle with delegation and collaboration and often feel overwhelmed and burned out. Then the superhero, this type of imposter syndrome involves feeling like you need to take on more than you can handle and constantly pushing yourself to the limit. Superheroes may struggle with setting boundaries and prioritizing self care. And finally, the natural genius. People with this type of imposter syndrome feel like they need to be naturally gifted or talented to succeed and may struggle with putting in the effort required to learn and grow. They may also feel like they need to learn quickly and easily and may become frustrated or discouraged when things don't easily come to them. It's important to recognize that everyone's experience with imposter syndrome is unique, and you may find that you relate to more than one type. When you understand the different types of imposter syndrome and how they can manifest, you can begin to develop strategies for overcoming them and unlocking your full potentials. Professionals in healthcare, education, and business can be affected by imposter syndrome. Let's say, as a health professional, you might start feeling like you don't have enough experience or knowledge to care for your patients. You may worry that you will make a mistake or miss something important, and this will lead to negative outcomes for your patient. As an educator, you may feel like you're not good enough or knowledgeable enough to effectively teach your students. You may worry that your students will find out that you're not as smart or competent as you appear, leading to feelings of shame and embarrassment. Business professionals may also feel like they are not qualified to make decisions or lead a team. You may worry that you'll be exposed as a fraud and lose your job or damage your reputation. And then, as an artist, writer, or a creative, you may feel like you're not talented or creative. And then, as an artist, writer, or a creative, you may feel like you're not talented or creative enough to produce work that's worthy of recognition. You may worry that others will see your work as mediocre or unoriginal. These are just a few examples of how imposter syndrome can manifest in different professionals. But the important thing is to remember that imposter syndrome is a common experience that affects many people, regardless of their field or level of experience. When you recognize these feelings and take steps to address them, you can overcome imposter syndrome and achieve success in your career. When it comes to the causes of imposter syndrome, it's quite complex and it can vary from person to person. Some factors that can contribute to imposter syndrome includes upbringing, culture, societal expectations, and upbringing can actually play a very significant role in the development of imposter syndrome because if you were raised in an environment where perfection was expected or where mistakes were heavily criticized, you may develop imposter syndrome as an adult. Your parents or caregivers may have unintentionally instilled the belief that you're not good enough, and this can manifest as imposter syndrome. Then the cultural expectations and norms can also contribute to imposter syndrome because in some cultures, for example, success is highly valued and failure is seen as shameful. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy and a fear of failure, which can manifest as imposter syndrome. Then the society's expectations and standards can also contribute to imposter syndrome. Women, people of color, and other marginalized groups may be more likely to experience imposter syndrome due to societal biases and stereotypes. For example, women may be told that they are not as competent as men, leading to feelings of self doubt and imposter syndrome. Most importantly, there is no single cause of imposter syndrome, and it is often the result of a combination of factors. Societal pressures and expectations can have a significant impact on our feelings of inadequacy and self doubt, which can contribute to imposter syndrome. From a young age, we are bombarded with messages about what success looks like and how we should behave in order to achieve it. We are told to aim for the highest grades, attend the best schools, and land the most prestigious jobs. These expectations can be overwhelming, especially when combined with messages about what we should look like and how we should act. For many people, these societal pressures can lead to feelings of inadequacy and self doubt. We may feel like we're not measuring up to the standards set by society, which can lead to anxiety, stress, and a fear of failure. And this can be especially true for members of marginalized groups who may face additional challenges and stereotypes that can make it harder to succeed. Also, social media and other forms of media can also contribute to feelings of inadequacy and self doubt. We're all bombarded with images of perfect bodies, perfect homes, and perfect lives, which can lead us to compare ourselves to others and feel like we're falling short. All of the societal pressures and expectations can contribute to imposter syndrome, making us feel like we don't belong or aren't good enough. But when we recognize the societal pressures and learn to manage them, we can begin to overcome imposter syndrome and achieve success in our careers. Let me give you a few examples of how cultural expectations and upbringing can affect individual perceptions and contribute to imposter syndrome. When you grew up, if you let's say you grew up in a family where success was highly valued, you may have internalized the belief that anything less than perfection is failure. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy and a fear of not measuring up to your family's expectations, which can contribute to imposter syndrome. Or in some cultures, there are rigid expectations around gender roles and what men and women should be doing. For example, women may be expected to focus on marriage and motherhood, while men are expected to be the breadwinners. If you don't fit these traditional gender roles, you may feel like you don't belong or like you're not living up to societal expectations, which can contribute to imposter syndrome. And then in some cultures, there's a strong emphasis on conformity and fitting in. If you don't fit in with the cultural norms around behaviors, dress, or language, you may feel like you're not a real member of your community. And this can lead to feelings of self doubt and imposter syndrome. Some cultures also place high value on intelligence and academic achievement. If you didn't excel in school, or if you struggle with a particular subject, you may have internalized the belief that you're not smart enough and that you don't have what it takes to succeed. This can contribute to imposter syndrome and a feeling of being found out as fraud, which is fear. Now, this shows how cultural expectations can shape our beliefs about ourselves and contribute to imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can have a profound impact on professional growth and success. When you don't feel confident in your abilities or like you belong in your chosen profession, you may hold yourself back from taking risks, pursuing new opportunities, or seeking out the help and support you need to succeed. Let's say someone with imposter syndrome may avoid asking questions in meetings or seeking feedback on their work out of fear that they'll be exposed as fraud. They might also avoid taking on new challenges or responsibilities out of a fear that they may be seen as incompetent. Over time, these behaviors can limit our professional growth and success. You may miss out on opportunities to learn and develop new skills, or you may fail to build the relationship and networks that are essential to success in your field. You may also struggle to advance in your careers, as imposter syndrome can make it difficult for you to advocate for yourself or to negotiate for better salaries and benefits. When you're constantly questioning your abilities and feeling like you're not good, it can create a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety. You may feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, worried that you'll be found out as a fraud at any moment, and this can lead to chronic stress, which can contribute to burnout. So, imposter syndrome can make it difficult to find meaning and satisfaction in your work. You may also feel like you're not making any meaningful contribution or like you're not valued for your skills and expertise. And this can contribute to feelings of depression and a sense of hopelessness. Over time, this mental and emotional struggles can take a serious toll on your well-being. You may begin to experience physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches, or you may begin to struggle to keep or maintain healthy relations. So, if left unaddressed, it can lead to a cycle of burnout, anxiety, and depression that can be difficult to break. It's important to recognize the signs of imposter syndrome and to seek help and support if you're struggling with these issues by working with a therapist, coach, or any other mental health professional. That way, you can learn strategies for managing your anxiety and build greater confidence in your abilities. And with time and effort, you can break free from the cycle of imposter syndrome and enjoy greater well being and success in your career. Imagine a woman who has just been promoted to a leadership position at her company. Despite her qualifications and experience, she begins to doubt whether she's truly capable of leading a team. Now, she worries that her colleagues will discover that she's not as competent as they think she is, and she feels like she's constantly working on eggshells. Because of this, she begins to avoid taking on new challenges or advocating for herself at work. She doesn't speak up in meetings or offer her opinions out of a fear of being exposed as a fraud. She also avoids seeking out mentorship or guidance as she worries that others will see this as a sign of weakness. Over time, these behaviors can begin to take a toll on her career. She misses out on opportunities to develop her skills and build relationships with colleagues, and then she struggles to advance in her career. She may even begin to feel like she's stuck in a dead end job with no way to break out of the cycle of self doubt and fear. Now, this is just one example out of the many things and many ways that imposter syndrome can affect our careers. It can take many different forms depending on your backgrounds, experiences, and personalities. But one thing is clear: imposter syndrome can hold you back from achieving your full potential, and it's important to recognize the signs and work to overcome them. Fortunately, there are many strategies and techniques that can help us overcome imposter syndrome and build greater confidence in ourselves. One effective technique is positive self talk. This involves consciously challenging negative thoughts and replacing them with positive affirmations. For example, instead of thinking, I am not good enough for this job, you might say to yourself, I'm capable and qualified for this role, and I can do a great job. By repeating these affirmations regularly, you can help to retrain your brain to focus on the strengths and abilities rather than your perceived shortcomings. Another technique is seeking support from others. This can involve talking to a trusted friend, family member, or mentor about your feelings of self doubt and inadequacy. You might also want to consider working with a therapist or coach who can help you to develop new strategies for managing your anxiety and building greater confidence in your abilities. It can also be helpful to reframe negative thoughts and beliefs. For example, if you find yourself thinking, I'm not good enough for this job, you might reframe that thought as, I have valuable skills and experience that makes me a strong candidate for this role. By reframing negative thoughts in this way, you can begin to shift your perspective and build greater confidence in yourself. Finally, it is important to remember that overcoming imposter syndrome is a process and it wouldn't happen overnight. But with patience, practice, and persistence, you can develop the skills and strategies that you need to manage your anxiety and build greater confidence in yourself. With time, you can break free from the cycle of imposter syndrome and achieve greater success and fulfillment in your career. Self compassion, mindfulness are two powerful tools for managing imposter syndrome. Self compassion involves treating yourselves with kindness, understanding, and acceptance rather than harsh criticism or judgment. Self compassion involves treating yourselves with kindness, understanding, and acceptance rather than harsh criticism or judgment. When you practice self compassion, you are able to acknowledge your imperfections and mistakes without letting them define you. They can help you build greater resilience and self esteem and even feel more confident in your abilities. Then again, mindfulness, it involves being present and fully engaged in the moment without judgment or distraction. When you practice mindfulness, you can become more aware of your thoughts and actions and develop greater clarity and perspective, and this can help you to recognize and manage feelings of self doubt and inadequacy and to focus more fully on your strengths and abilities. So, if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, consider incorporating self compassion and mindfulness practices in your daily routine, whether it's through meditation, journaling, or simply taking time to reflect and connect with yourself. These practices can help you to build greater self awareness, confidence, and resilience to achieve success in greater areas and fulfillment in your life. If you're listening to this podcast and find yourself resonating with some of the experience that I've discussed, I want to encourage you to take action. Imposter syndrome can be a real challenge, but it doesn't have to control your life and career. The first step is acknowledging that you're experiencing these feelings and recognizing that it is a common experience that many people face. From there, it's important to seek help and support. Talk to someone you trust, whether it's a friend, family member, or professional. Consider joining a support group and seek out resources specifically focused on imposter syndrome. When you talk to others who have been through similar experiences, you can get new insights and strategies for managing imposter syndrome. Remember that there is no shame in seeking help or support. In fact, it takes courage to ask for help. In closing, I want to offer some final thoughts and advice on how to overcome imposter syndrome and thrive as a professional. First, remember that you're not alone. Many successful people have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their careers, and it's a common experience that affects many people across different fields and industries. Secondly, recognize that overcoming imposter syndrome is a process. It's not a quick fix. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to challenge your negative self talk and limiting beliefs. But with persistence and the right tools and strategies, you can overcome imposter syndrome and achieve your goals. And finally, be very kind to yourself. Remember that you are capable and deserving of success. Practice self compassion and focus on your strengths and accomplishments. Don't let imposter syndrome hold you back from pursuing your dreams and reaching your full potential. Thank you for listening to this podcast on overcoming imposter syndrome. I hope you found it helpful and informative. Remember, you have the power to overcome imposter syndrome and thrive as a professional and as an individual. My name is Fortune and I am your host on the Fortune Living Podcast. See you on my next episode.